You need answers, and that's why in the studio today with me is Eugene Kantorovich. He's professor at Northwestern University Law School, a senior member, senior, what is it called?
Senior fellow.
A senior fellow, that's the word I missed, at the Kohelet Policy Forum. And what that means is that he's thinking about the future of Israel in terms of law. If you Google him or YouTube him, you will find incredible videos, explanations of Israel's rights and Israel's justice in its holding on to its ancestral homeland. And you will see those lies against Israel, those claims exposed. Eugene, thank you so much for joining me today.
Great pleasure to be here, Yishai.
It's fun to have you today. And before we get to the laws, which I am very interested in, let's talk about the feelings for a second. Before the show started, you and I were talking in the kitchen a little bit about the newest accusations that the Obama administration has leveled against Israel, and now the accusations are on the spying, the supposed spying that Israel is doing on these Iran P5+1 negotiations. And what's amazing to me is the endless litany of continuous accusations. It's like ratcheting it up, war, splitting between the United States administration and the Israeli administration. Tell me about how you see these affairs and this split right now.
So President Obama hasn't been in politics too long. He never ran for office too many times, but in his political career has been very successful. He ran for Senate and won. He ran for president twice and won both times. So the Israeli prime ministerial elections are one of the first elections he's lost. And that seems to be how he's taking it. And ever since President Obama lost the Israeli elections, he's been on a constant campaign of antagonism and what really appears to be a daily drumbeat to grow and increase the tensions between Israel and America. The Iranian spying story, which was obviously leaked from the White House, is an example to me of the White House's determination to create every possible distance with Israel, even when it comes to sort of surprising accusations or almost non-stories. That is to say, the Obama administration planted a story, which I'm sure is true, saying, shocking, Israel has been trying to collect intelligence on the future of the Iranian nuclear program. So this is the Iranian nuclear program, which Iran has said is designed to destroy Israel. Iran, everybody agrees, is the biggest geopolitical threat to Israel. And Israel is trying to find out what's going to be with its nuclear program. So that's not a surprise to anybody. It's not shocking. Americans aren't shocked and upset. And to make a story of this, even, I must say, at the cost of revealing both American and Israeli intelligence methods and collection capabilities. That is to say, it came out in the story. How does America know that Israel has been collecting this intelligence? Because America has been spying on the communications of Israeli officials. So, first of all, now we know what America does, which of course everyone probably knew before. Now the Iranians know what Israel is doing. And all of this is being revealed and played out in the press simply to try to create a more hostile and dark mood in America regarding Israel, and to try what we seem to be seeing happening in American foreign policy, at least as directed from the White House. I don't think this is representative of the views of America or the people of America, is an attempt to do a massive role reversal in the Middle East, with Iran becoming America's steadfast ally and Israel the rogue state.
Those are incredible accusations against a country, against the United States, or the United States administration more correctly, which has for the last 70 years been seen as Israel's best friend in the Middle East, and Israel has been seen as America's best friend in the Middle East. You're detailing a kind of a narrative, a soap opera, where it's kind of going down a slippery slope. Where's it going? Is this going to cause a rift? And there's another player here. The Israeli Jews have shown their card. They have said no to foreign intervention. They have said no to Bibi. They have said no to V15 and the New York Times. They have said no to Bougie Herzog. They want a nationalist, what an Arab Knesset member called, Ahmed Tibi called, a tribal decision, a tribal vote. That's what was cast. But American Jews are on a different side right now. They are on more of the liberal sale right now. They're in the liberal mindset, and President Obama symbolizes ostensibly that liberal mindset, although he seems to be in bed with people who are very illiberal. But still, that is the mindset. And there is a growing rage and split. So the J Street conference that I mentioned earlier was full of vitriol against Israel and against Israel's democratic choices. So where are we headed right now? We are seeing a split between American Jewry and Israeli Jewry, a split that is being it's being orchestrated by President Obama between Israeli administration and the United States administration. Is that where is it heading, to a rift, to an abyss?
So I don't think it's heading that way necessarily. I do think that's part of what the White House is trying to encourage. But when one talks about rifts between American Jews and Israeli Jews, I think it's good to zoom up a little, zoom out, and look at the issue from a bit of a broader perspective. Especially when one talks about the rift between liberal American Jews or secular American Jews and Israel. Because if one's talking about the future of American Jews, and secular American Jews in particular, the elephant in the room, the vastly overwhelming fact, is not any detail about their relationship with Israel, but rather the fact that their relationship with being Jewish in general is rapidly diminishing. Assimilation is the order of the day. Intermarriage rates amongst unaffiliated Jews are up 70, 80%. And in general, the future for secular, unaffiliated American Jews is very, very tenuous. And I think most liberal Jews, who also happen to be generally secular, unaffiliated, the saddest thing isn't that they're turning away from Israel, but that their Jewish future is, in general, quite tenuous.
You would think that they would jump to have a relationship with Israel because it's generally a secular state. It has a lot of liberalism. It's actually the bastion of liberalism here in the Middle East. You would think that American Jewry would kind of jump in and say, look, I may not have a very Jewish identity, I may not be very nationalist, but I'll connect to this country that's my country, and that will give me my identity. You would think that, but they're losing that connection as well right now.
For many of them, the sense of Jewish identity is already so attenuated that even that kind of thinking would be a reach. But that's the big story. And the people who we think of as representatives of liberal American Jews, the people who write for a few newspapers and go to a few organizational conferences, their constituency is very thin. It's not because they're not demographically representative of a lot of people. It's because the people they're demographically representative of, unfortunately, don't care so much either way. Right, which is that's the overriding fact. At the same, so there's a rift, I would say, between American liberal Jewish intellectuals in Israel.
So between Peter Beinart and Israel, and that's
very few people go to their congregations. Right, those are not packed pews. Now, at the same time, American Jews do generally associate very strongly with the Democratic Party, and part of, I think, the White House's effort of very consciously not just having a policy rift with Israel, but having one at a very high level of volume, with a very great level of emotional intensity. That is to say, the rhetoric we're seeing from the White House, we don't see about Putin's annexation of Crimea, invasion of Ukraine, Iran's nuclear program. It's really, ever since the anti-communist military coup in Honduras, it's hard to think of a similarly strong reaction by the White House. I think it's designed to really test the loyalties of American Jews, who, if really forced to choose, right, if they have two parents, so to speak, they have the parent of their Jewish background, and they have the parent of their liberal ideas, and their parents are having a fight. Right? So the bet is they will come to...
and then what?
Well, so that's important to him for the following reason. It provides some narrative and political cover for what would otherwise seem a very harsh turn against the world's only Jewish country. So it's very important that he be able to say, and some Jews agree with me. Look at these Jews at J Street, look at this. Now,
and does that provide also cover for the pro-Iran stance as well?
So the pro-Iran stance is very hard. I'm baffled by the pro-Iran stance. That is to say, if one were ever to think of a foreign policy idea, rapprochement with Iran is just baffling for me. That is to say, the analogy people make is, well, it's like Nixon's rapprochement with China. But China was already a nuclear power, and the rapprochement was supposed to help the United States in a much, much, much larger battle with the Soviet Union, which was a massive enemy that maybe the US couldn't take on itself. But Iran, compared to either the Soviet Union or China, is nothing. The United States could deal with this itself if it wanted to, and does not need to stoop to rapprochement. I really just don't see the big idea. Again, it's very hard to understand in relation to what the president said was his attempt to restart relations with the Middle East. We remember his Cairo speech, and even if the notion is to improve relations with the Muslim world, this is a very strange way of doing this because, of course, Iran is not the Muslim world. It's the Persian Shiite world, which is a very particular thing. And as we know, the Muslim countries in the area are reacting with horror at this.
We're speaking with Professor Eugene Kantorovich about the split between U.S. and Israel, about rapprochement with Iran, and the baffling changes that are happening right before us. We'll be back right after this break. You're listening to Yishai Fleisher on Voice of Israel. Stay tuned.
I just wanted people to hear a different voice of an Israeli Arab who is loyal to his country.
Mohammed Zoabi became a household name because of his pro-Israel videos. He joins us in studio to talk about what it's like to be a 17-year-old Israeli Muslim Zionist.
I was born in this country, and whatever happens to this country happens to me, no matter from an Arab, Jew, Christian.
The full interview is archived on Israel Inspired with Ari Abramowitz and Jeremy Gimpel on Voice of Israel.
Hey, Jeremy, the election's over. Hey, buddy.
Finally.
So now what do we do?
Now we have to build a coalition.
A coalition? What are you talking about? Bibi won the thing. We just had an election. What does that mean?
Negotiations.
Negotiations? Is that something we do with a foreign country?
No, that's something we do among our own political parties. Pretty much you get in a room and you start giving out the fun stuff.
How does that work, buddy?
You're going to have to tune in Tuesdays on The Josh Hasten Show.
That's Knesset Insider Jeremy Sultan every Tuesday on Voice of Israel.
All right, folks, we're back here on the Yishai Fleisher Show. Professor Eugene Kantorovich. He's a professor at Northwestern University Law and a senior fellow at the Kohelet Policy Forum here in Israel is my guest. And Eugene, I knew you back in the Chicago days.
Exactly.
And you were passionate about Israel and passionate about Israeli issues, but you took it one step further and you said, I want to be part of it. And yet you had your law school teaching career and you made Aliyah and you made it work. Tell me about that a little bit.
Thanks to the modern miracles of air travel, I'm a professor at Northwestern. I teach there. And at the same time, I managed to live in Israel. It can be hectic sometimes. But I think it works, and I'm very grateful to Northwestern for making that happen. And it shows that people often think it's hard to be a Jew, or it's hard to be a religious Jew, or it's hard to make Aliyah. These things are easier today than in any other time in history, because we have so many technologies, we have so many tools to make it work. It used to be, you wanted to come to Israel, you got on a boat, first of all, I know you like the boat, but you got on a boat and you might never see your parents again. They didn't have telephones in this country in most people's houses until the 1970s. Forget Skype. So you used to have to say goodbye, but now you don't have to say goodbye.
And your family's here, and you're living close to Jerusalem. And,
exactly.
And, it's great to have you. And you're also involved in the future of Israel through planning at the Kohelet Policy Forum. The Kohelet Policy Forum is a think tank and a kind of a
policy group.
Right, a policy group, and it's thinking about the future of Israel. And the reason I mention that is because yesterday I had on the show Alan Elner, who's the VP of Communications for J Street. And as we were talking right at the beginning, he said, well, we believe that the two-state solution is the only way forward. And I challenged him on that. I said, I didn't challenge him on the specific issue of two-state. I said to him, why do you say it's the only? Why don't you think about it? I mean, if I was J Street, I would be like, let's have a panel and talk about other options. Maybe there's other ways forward. But it's like this mantra of only. It's like it starts to feel a little bit like it's not that it's really the only, it's that it's the only one that you really want for some reason. It's not really the only option out there. And he said to me immediately, he turned the tables on me and he said, well, what's another option? You tell me. So I gave him the Jordan is Palestine option as one option. It's amazing to me how we hear this mantra over and over again, and we're kind of led to believe that there's nothing else to think about. You've been one of the pioneers in thinking about one-statism, how that could work. Tell me first a little bit about this idea that only two-state solution is the way forward.
Very much in the spirit of the comments Prime Minister Netanyahu recently made about the impracticability at the current juncture of a two-state solution, which I want to put those comments in an important context. Part of the hysterical reaction of the White House, about which we were just speaking, about Bibi's comments regarding the impracticability of a two-state solution, the White House was saying, Bibi's broken with all Israeli policy. He's taken this radical position. It's very important to put this in context. What Bibi said by saying the conditions are not currently ripe for the creation of another Arab state between the river and the sea is also what Isaac Herzog has been saying throughout the entire campaign, and is, as far as I know, the position of every party in Israel except for the Arab List and Meretz. That is to say, the position of the Labour Party, the Zionist Union, as far as I understand, is Palestinian state is a good idea in some kind of abstract sense, but yes, with all the Arab countries collapsing, the rise of Islamicism, now is not the time. If you recall, when she was in office, Tzipi Livni had this idea in the Olmert administration of a shelf agreement, and the idea of a shelf agreement is we can't actually do this now, but it's so important as a matter of, I don't know what, proving our goodwill to show that we want to do it, that we should actually sign everything away and then put it up on a shelf. So
but not actually implement it.
But not actually implement it. So this notion that it's not this notion that Bibi said something radical or dangerous, I think it has only been contended because it was Bibi saying it, and because of a desire to create distance with the Netanyahu government. But other than that, this notion that the time is not right or that it's not a good idea now is shared by everyone who has to live in what would remain of Israel under this plan, because obviously nobody wants to live under these conditions. So,
and you mean by that?
So if a Palestinian state were created along the 1949 armistice lines, that would mean that Tel Aviv and Petah Tikva would be Sderot. That is to say, the tunnels wouldn't be going to some southern town with a working class population that no one cares about. The tunnels would be coming. They'd be coming up in Rabin Square, and Ben Gurion Airport wouldn't be closed for a day. Every once in a while, it would be closed all the time. And the demographic catastrophe with which Israel is so often threatened would actually materialize in that situation. Because when the rockets start falling on Tel Aviv, I fear, God forbid, lots of people would say, this isn't the place for me to live.
And the reason that you think that rockets are likely to fall in Tel Aviv is an obvious one. We have a quote-unquote Arab Spring around here. We have the ISIS period that we're living in. And we have the Gaza experiment, which has proven out to everybody this is what happens when you give away land at this time. You have two more leaders right now. You have Mahmoud Abbas, who is just proven himself to be no friend of Israel. And you have President Barack Obama, which gives no back to Israel. At least that's a perception of the average Israeli. So the average Israeli believes he's not become a big religious Zionist right-winger. He just believes that, practically speaking, this is not something that can happen right now.
Right, exactly. And so when we talk about two-state solution, I think this is what Bibi was getting at. Even more than, before any criticism one might have had of the two-state solution before, now one needs to ask even more fundamental questions. What's it mean to have an Arab state in the Middle East today? That is to say, in the two-state solution, we're going to have another Arab state, just like the great Arab states of Egypt and Syria, which were the strong pillars of Arab nationalism. Egypt now has gone through 2 coups in the past couple of years and has lost control of the Sinai Peninsula, which Israel returned to it, gave it in the Camp David Accords. Egypt has lost control. ISIS has declared a caliphate in the Sinai on the west, and is not far away in Iraq and Syria on the other side of the border.
And threatening Jordan. And
Syria was a strong Arab country, strong in a way that the Fatah government could never imagine being. And I like to say Fatah is a fossil. that what is Fatah, the regime of Mahmoud Abbas? Fatah is, you'd have to look in a history book to find this now. It is a Nasserite Arab nationalist party. They don't make those anymore. And that Arab nationalist ideology of which it is a part, it doesn't exist anymore. That tide has receded, and there is a new tide, or two new tides. There's the tide of Islamicism, and there's the tide of Persian Shia imperialism. Those are the two flavors of the day in the Middle East. And in the Middle East, nobody's an island. That is to say, why during the 50s, 60s, 70s was everyone an Arab nationalist, a Ba'athist, a communist? Those were the influential forces, those were the intellectual forces, and those were the actual powerful forces. Those forces do not exist. And one can't just pick what one would like to be. One is influenced by the environment, and we have to predict that an Arab state would be not unlike the other ones, with the exception of Abbas being even weaker than, for example, the secular regime in Syria and the secular regime in Egypt to withstand challenges.
The likelihood that Mahmoud Abbas would survive more than a few days in this Palestine, Judean Samaria in the West Bank is very small. We have about 3 minutes left, and we're speaking with Professor Eugene Kantorovich. Eugene, okay, so two-state is not going to work, yet I've been told by J Street and by the Obama administration, by the New York Times, that it's the only way. It's the only way. Now I'm asking you in the 2.5 minutes that we have left, what is other potential ways? How do we move forward here?
So again, I was like, what two states means is inherently ambiguous. I'm sure if you asked the J Street people, do the Palestinians have a state? They would have to say yes, because the Palestinians say they have a state. They have on all their letterhead, State of Palestine. They have a president of the State of Palestine. And I'd be very interested to see if the J Street people would argue with them and say, no, guys, you've made a mistake. You don't have a state. You're deluding yourselves. I don't think that's their position. So the position of the Palestinians, actually, ironically, is we have a state, which suggests we already have a two-state solution. So what they want now is not a two-state solution, but a rather greater concessions towards the state they claim already exists. The principal argument for the two-state solution is that it is unjust for Israel to rule the Palestinians. They should have their own government. By the Palestinians themselves say, we have our own government. We have a prime minister. Mahmoud Abbas is the democratically elected representative of the Palestinians. Now, admittedly, they elected him for a 4-year term 11 years ago, but this is the neighborhood. So how could he be the democratically elected representative and they don't vote? So they say they have a state. So the status quo is already could be described as some kind of two-state solution.
Eugene Kantorovich, having you in is so makes the appetite wet for more information. You have great videos that people can find on YouTube. You're a professor at Northwestern, at the law school there, and a senior fellow at the Kohelet Policy Forum. I want to thank you so much for joining me here in studio.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Take care.
All right, folks, more great stuff is on the way here on the Yishai Fleisher Show, where we think about the future of Israel and a better Middle East. Stay tuned, stay strong, and stay connected, and shalom.
Voice of Israel, your source for news and views on everything Israel.